in Yaakov. Again, we're on chapter 3 of Brachot. We are on page 24a. Okay, so here it goes. It says, Amar Rav Yitzchak. So Rav Yitzchak said, Tefach be'isha irva. A tefach, you don't have it? No? Okay. A tefach is a hand this size. 3.5 to 4 inches. A tefach is a fist. Okay? So the size of a fist. So 3.5 to 4 inches, right. Okay, so if you have that much of exposed skin in a woman, that's considered irva, which normally would translate as nakedness. Okay. So now, a quick introduction to this before we get too far afield. Normally, what it means, whenever it says irva, it means something that's normally covered. Okay. So that's all going to depend on the local practice, as the Ashkel himself will say. An exposed tefach of a woman's face or hands, for example, is classified in nakedness only in the community where the women typically conceal these parts. However, there are other parts of the body, the thigh, the upper arm, whose exposure is deemed nakedness, regardless of local custom. So we have some things that we're going to learn are irva regardless, and others are considered, again, irva nakedness, are considered irva only dependent upon the local custom. So in this particular case, Rav Yitzchak is saying that if I have a tefach, again, 3.5 to 4 inches of exposed skin of a woman that is normally covered, that's considered nakedness. Now, what's going to happen is, if it's considered nakedness, then I cannot do a davar shebekadusha in front of her. I can't do something of holiness in front of that woman, like praying the Shema, or saying Shemona Esrei, even learning Torah. I'm not allowed to do that because it's irva, and I have kedusha, I have holiness, and when I'm learning the Torah or when I'm praying to God, so my mind cannot be in a place of nakedness, because nakedness is representing the carnal activities. Okay, so if I'm going to look at a woman, I'm going to see something I normally wouldn't see, I'm going to be distracted by that. Okay, that's what the Talmud is dealing with, and it's a very important principle even today of what we can do and what we can't do, the halacha, as far as the Jewish law is concerned. So the Gemara wants to clarify. It says, Lamai, regarding what was this tefach, this amount of skin mentioned. So the Gemara says, Ilema listakule be, but if you're going to say that it was regarding the prohibition of gazing at a woman, that's an impossibility. When I'm mistakel at something, anything, mistakel means I'm gazing, I'm intensely looking at. My mind, I'm allowing my mind to get stuck on something. Okay, when you gaze, there's two ways to look at anything. I can see something, or I can really gaze at it. If I'm going to the beach, okay, then which type of beaches? But I'm going to the beach. My choice is we have this concept even in American law. It's called lewd and lascivious behavior. Okay, I think that's what it's called. But when I can walk by the beach and I can just notice the water and skip everybody else, right? Because, by the way, when would I do that? When I'm used to it. If I'm desensitized enough, I can walk through Manhattan, I can in New York on a hot summer day, and not look at everybody who's dressed inappropriately for my standards. Okay, I won't notice them because they'll be like anything else. They'll be like a car on the street. I won't notice them.
Like the trees in the forest.
Trees in the forest, you don't notice them. On the other hand, let's say somebody dresses so what's the expression? So out there. There's no way I'm not going to notice that. A guy walks in a mohawk or the springy hair that they used to have. There's no way you don't look at that. I'm sorry. It's just shocking to the system.
Dyed green.
Dye green. Or when you see a guy, what has become normal is when you see people walking around with their pants down by their what do you call it? below their underwear. Okay, that's pretty. What do you call that when you see it every day? It's ubiquitous. It's a ubiquitous thing. We're not seeing anything new. We see the guy, he's wearing his pants below. We understand where he's coming from. We think we know where he's coming from. We make our judgments, but it's not something that I'm going to look at and say, what happened? There's only a few people that are going to yell out, pull your pants up! But normally it doesn't happen because we're used to it. When you see a woman walking around in a miniskirt, for the most part, because today you're used to it again, you're not going to do it. Or the other way, when you see her walking with a dress that's sweeping the stairs as she walks. Again, you're not going to say, pull your stuff up. We're so used to it. Okay? But if somebody, like I said, dresses out of the ordinary, when they have all the earrings around them, they're doing that for a reason. They want us to notice them. And we notice them. Okay, so now that's his takel. I look at that person and I'm thinking, what are they doing? Or the guys who have these tattoos all over the place. They obviously want attention from us. So you give me attention, you look and see, okay, fine. But and then we can decide what we want. Discussing, not discussing, cool, not cool. That's up to you. But when you're mistakel at something, you're looking into that very much so. As compared to, I just see it, now walk off. Okay? You see a beautiful sunset, you're mistakel at that, right? When you see a beautiful sunset, you're gazing at it. You're thinking of the beauties of what Hashem has done. Or for those atheists out there, you're thinking about the beauty of the sunset. They want to paint it. Fine. Whatever the case is, I'm mistakel. But when I'm not, if I'm so desensitized to that stuff, I don't mistakel at it. I just look at it. I see it, it's in front of me, and I go on. When you drive through, you know what happens when you're driving through the mountains of Pennsylvania, you know, on Route 80 or 90. There are some scenes that are just so breathtaking that you have to be careful that you don't go off the road. Because that's, you just want to keep looking at it. That's, again, an example of mistakel. So have I identified mistakel as compared to just looking, okay? So that's what the rabbi is saying. As the Gemara is saying, if that's what he meant, that there's a tefach, and I'm mistakel at something, so then it can't be. Why? Because we have a verse. Right? Yeah, because we have not a verse, we have a statement. Hayam Rav Shesha, for Rav Shesha said, Lama mana hakatuv tachshiten shevachutz im tachshit shebifnim. Why did the Torah list the outer jewelry together with the inner jewelry? You had a war going on here when the Jews defeated the army of Midian, so the Israelites declared to the soldiers declared to Moshe that we brought an offering to Hashem. What any man found of gold vessels, anklet, bracelet, ring, a gill, and kumas to atone for our souls for Hashem. They had taken these items of jewelry from the Midianite women and they donated to the Mishkan to atone for having gazed at the women and entertaining immoral thoughts. Now, the kumas is the ornament that covered the woman's private parts. It was okay, and then so. Here they're offering everything together, offering that which covered the woman's parts and also that which she wore around her neck. So the question is, why would they bring both? So since the offering, so Rav Shesha is raising the following difficulties. That since the offering was intended to atone for having indulged in lewd thoughts, it should have included only the intimate items of jewelry that gave rise to this, such as the kumas. Why did it include the articles of outer jewelry such as anklets, bracelets, and rings? Okay, it depends on what I'm doing. So he says why. Lomar lecha, so the Gemara answers, Rav Shesha answers, Lomar lecha kol hamistakel be'ezpa ketana shel isha ki'ilu mistakel b'mikom hatoref. To teach us a very simple rule, that anybody who leers, or again, this mistakel gazes intensely at the small finger of a woman. It's as if he looked in a place of her nakedness. Okay, so again, this is the power of being of this mistakel, where I'm gazing at something. If I'm looking at this any part of the woman, any part, and I'm thinking these lewd thoughts of what I want to do with that woman, that is forbidden. Under any circumstances, she could be totally covered. Who cares? If I am looking at even her small pinky, which nobody thinks is sexy, okay? Let's understand, it has nothing to do with what I think is sexy, what I think is turning me on, nothing to do with that. If I'm mistakel, if I'm gazing at something and building my whole scenario up from that, that's what's forbidden. Okay? Very important to recognize. Because everybody says, what? A little finger is so sexy? Has nothing to do with that. It's where my mind is going. And that's forbidden. Because I'm not allowed to cause myself arousal unless I'm going to perform the mitzvah with my wife. And that's only when I'm supposed to be looking at her and not at some other woman. You're not allowed to do that. You have to only arouse yourself properly with her at the right time and with the right intention and so on and so forth. That's what we're supposed to do. And if I'm looking at somebody else and arouse myself, and I'm going to even use my wife as the outlet, not acceptable either according to Jewish law. Okay? That's why if somebody's going to buy a magazine, whatever the various magazines would be, it's incorrect. You have to, your wife is your queen. How dare you use your queen as your prostitute? It's unacceptable. And you can't allow yourself to get caught up in these other fantasies you have, because that's not what we do. That's not what the Torah wants. The Torah wants us to love our wives, to be appropriate with them at all times, and to engage when we should. Okay? That's really what we're trying to get across. So that's why the Torah includes the jewelry, which normally we would not think is fitting to be given to the Mizbeach, or for the raise money for the Mizbeach, or the Mishkan in this case. And yet we're told that no, it all comes together to teach us that just as we shouldn't gaze at her little finger, that's why we had to hear it, so also we shouldn't gaze at, if you gaze at her finger and you come up with these thoughts, it's as if you were looking at her place of nakedness. So it can't be, and then now it goes back to the beginning, it can't be that when Rav Yitzchak said that tefach of nakedness you can't see, that it was talking about mistakel, it must be talking about 3 to 4 inches of real, what we call nakedness. Again, those things that are normally covered, that is not covered now. Okay? So it says, Ella, what we're really talking about is Ishta, the Ishta. You can't see a tefach of skin that is normally covered, talking about his wife, the Kriyat Shema. And when we're talking about the recital of the Shema. Shema is when I'm taking upon myself the yoke of God's government. So at that point, I should not be thinking of my wife. And if I see something going on with my wife who I am very familiar with, okay, so then if I see something that normally I wouldn't see, and I'm at this time of Kedusha, so my mind is going to be taken off kilter, so that I should not be doing. So he was saying that when it comes to a tefach of your wife's hair, or whatever it's going to be, so then I should not, I'm not allowed to look at that. I shouldn't see that, which is why when a person is davening, his wife should have her hair covered, or if she's coming through the room, or he shouldn't be davening around where his wife is walking around like that. Make your choice. You can go to shul and do a lot of things, but you don't have to. It's also one of the reasons for the Talmud Chitzas we have, because the question was asked to Rav Moshe Feinstein. We talk about mechitzas, and the question was, how high must the mechitza be? So Rav Moshe said, I think 5 feet. So because he was assuming that would cover the majority of the body, and in his mind, women were head covering.
Somebody standing, in other words.
Right. Yeah. In his mind, women were hair covering. So he was concerned if the head would come up. That's my guess on where he's coming from. Okay. Later, other people said, no, it has to be 6 feet. Mm-hmm. Why? And it has to be. You can't see through it. We can see through us, right? So you can't see through it, because you don't want to see the women, because they're going with maybe their hair's uncovered. If their hair's uncovered, then I can't see that, and I can't say Shema. Okay? It really, that's where all this is coming from. It's not coming. Everybody agrees, by the way, on the mechitza. The mechitza is only because of the Beis Hamikdash, and that's it. That's where it's coming from. But as far as how high it has to be, how see-through it is allowable, it's all based upon what everybody's wearing. Is everybody dressed appropriately or not? If everybody's dressed appropriately, so I can have a minimum mechitza. It doesn't matter. It's just separating these sexes at that point. Emulating the Beis Hamikdash, where, again, sexes were separated by God's desire. God told David, God, via prophecy, it says, told David how to build a temple. So it had different courtyards. You had a courtyard for men, a courtyard for women, so on and so forth. So since there's separation there, we separate in the synagogues. That's why we separate. Now, as far as height, as far as thickness, that's based upon different things. Okay, but mechitza is mechitza. And interestingly enough, the mechitza was taken down by the conservative, both Reform and Conservative. But in Conservative, where they say they follow Jewish law, or at least try to find some leniencies there, they never came up with a response for that.
Really?
To remove that. It was a bunch of articles that were written, but they never came up with a response. And really the reason that everybody took the mechitza away, this is a historical fact, is because the Protestants made up this whole thing of the people who prayed together, stayed together, family pews. That's really that's why the mechitza was broken down, because originally in Europe, everybody sat separate, including the Reform.
Churches, you mean?
Including the Reform and the Conservative. Separate seating, mixed seating only came in America in the 20s. Is that when Protestants did it? 20s or 30s?
I think so.
Yeah, around 20s. I think that's what it was. 20s or 30s. That's when Protestant churches said the family who prays together stays together, and they made family pews. It was a big thing for their church too. Don't kid yourself. It was not easy to break thousands of years.
Churches used to separate before.
Yeah. It was thousands of years of nearly 2,000 years of sitting separate, and suddenly they come to America, mixed. Okay, so Reform, the founders of Reform had separate seating. They had separate seating. In Germany, it was separate seating. It was not mixed seating. And that's a fact. That's a fact that nobody can deny. Okay, it's just the way it is. When it came to America, that's when they started to mix.
It also used to be divided by wealth.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it.
Who could afford these better seats?
You know,
the family would have their name on it.
That's
churches decided everywhere people sit where they want to.
Yeah. But that's the same. But it's very interesting. So just deal with the mechitza for that 1 second. But that's what the Gemara is talking about. It's dealing with your wife during Shema. Now he brings down this whole thing. He says that Rav Yitzchak teaches that a man may not recite the Shema if he can see a tevach of the part of his wife's body that is normally covered. Again, that's how it has to be. So, by the way, so let's say let's go the opposite way for 1 second. Let's assume the wife walks around her house without a head covering, without a tichel, without anything. Okay, he is very used to seeing his wife without the head covering. Okay, outside she'll wear a head covering, but inside she would not wear a head covering, or in her house. Okay, so that being the case, according to what it seems in this rule, then if he would say Shema, he's used to seeing her hair. He doesn't think twice about it, so it would not be a problem. It would only be a problem if she always covers her hair, even inside the house, and then then for some reason she's walking around without the head covering, and he's trying to say Shema, and he notices that could be the problem. Okay, so you'd have to say one of two things: either they always wear head coverings, or they're saying, as in the houses, like I just said, when they do wear head coverings, that would be what's going on. But the Our Scroll is picking on words that you wouldn't normally think you should pick on, namely, that's normally covered. Okay, this prohibition applies even if he does not gaze at the exposed area, rather, it's merely within the field of vision. That's how the Mishnah Brura says it. The reason for this prohibition is that the exposed area could provoke lustful thoughts and disturb his concentration. And let's face it, men are driven by one thing. That's what makes wars, that's what makes marriage, that's what makes everything, okay? And the rabbis are recognizing that. It's not necessarily God saying this, it's the rabbis recognizing where we are and where our mind always goes to. The rabbinic decisors discuss whether he must turn away from the forbidden sight or is it sufficient merely to close his eyes. Some authorities maintain that the measurement of a tefach applies only in the case of one's wife with regard to other women. Even exposed area less than a tefach prohibits recital of the Shema. Others, however, rule that the measurement tefach applies to even other women as well. Okay, so that you have a whole system going on there. So you have to ask the question too, what happens? I'm walking down the street. Most people are dressed inappropriately according to Jewish standards, correct? I'm not talking about non-Jews, forget the Jews in the system. The non-Jews, I was walking on, when I was at Notre Dame, somebody wore styles, I really want to say to them, lady, maybe it's Madonna, but it doesn't work for you. I'm not sure where you got that look for, but it was something that you looked at and said, did she not look in the mirror? But nonetheless, that's exposure. And again, they want you to see it. You're going to see it. Yeah. Sometimes you wish you didn't, but you see it. Okay? Now, if I was saying Shema during that moment, I don't know, it would have probably ruined the whole Shema according to this. Because I would have been sensitized to notice that this is an inappropriate dress. But like I said, let's say I'm teaching Torah, which I do at Notre Dame or the other colleges, and women would come in. It's normally women, but it could also be a man, depending on what's going on, walks in an appropriate attire. Am I allowed to continue teaching Torah? What would you say? According to this, am I allowed to teach Torah?
According to that,
or do I have to stop?
Probably not.
What would you say?
Probably not.
Probably not, right? So the rabbis said we have a problem. Because according to what we're saying, we'll never be able to learn Torah again. Unless we seclude ourselves in our base matters. Yeah. But it says in the Torah, when you walk on the way, speeds learning Torah. So if it's real feces on the ground, I can't do it regardless. But if I'm going to worry about somebody dressed inappropriately, and by the way, for their society it may be quite appropriate. Okay, I know we don't always have to agree with societal norms, but it could be inappropriate to me. I'm not used to it. So the rabbi said, using one of a line from Psalms, it says sometimes there's a line, Eit Lasot Lashem, which basically comes down to meaning sometimes you have to break the law to keep the law. In other words, you can't always follow everything as is written because sometimes it'll destroy the whole system. So if I'm never going to learn Torah because of the fear of irva, a woman walking by, or a man a man dressed inappropriately is also irva. Let's understand something. Okay, it's not just women, but if it's normally women because they're the sexual object that we're identifying. So, but if we're going to worry about that, we'll never learn Torah. So the rabbi said, okay, so when women are dressed inappropriately, and for those days, it was not like today. Yeah. For those days, they were walking around with bare feet, and that would make everybody upset because they weren't supposed to walk around with bare feet, and their hair may have been covered, whatever it's going to be. So if the rabbis were here today, these rabbis, I don't know what they would do. Again, walking on college campuses, walking down the street at a beach community. I don't know why people are beach communities. Anyway,
this is within our own lifetime. It's part of this.
Right. So it went from mini to midi to maxi dresses. Again, what is the moral standard that we have all the way down to nude beaches? By the way, you have that whole thing. On a nude beach, by the way, you could never claim that you don't see it. That's irva, period, and you can't do anything about it. Okay, you can never claim, oh, I'm used to that. No, if you're used to that, you're dead inside. Okay, but you should not be learning Torah in that situation. You shouldn't be there to begin with. We certainly can't be learning Torah. Okay, and you can't say Shema. You can't do anything. You have to leave the area. Like I said, I'm not sure why you're there in the first place, but whatever it is, you have to leave. Okay, but that's what the rabbis did. They said because that verse in Tehillim, they found a leniency for emergency situations, which would say I don't have to cease my teaching at that situation in the colleges, and I can continue on because, let's face it, if I was going to really worry about that, I'd never be able to teach or never be able to speak Torah again. Okay? That's what they were, and because we're living in the world. If I'm living in my base medrash, in my study hall, so I don't have to worry about it. But once I go out into the regular world, and I'm walking down the streets of Chicago or any major city during the summer when it's 80 degrees, you're not going to get somebody walking. You normally are going to have women walking around in tank tops and everything else, okay, and worse. And again, the men are even worse than that. So you have all those situations where you would never be able to learn Torah or never be able to do anything. So that's why the rabbis found that verse and used that. And like it says, Eid Lasot Lashem is time. Sometimes you have to break the law momentarily in order to maintain what we have. It's an interesting thing. Okay. So now the Gemara goes on. It says, I just had to give you all that background. So Rav Chisda said, Shok B'isha Erva. The thigh of a woman is also considered nakedness. Now here we go. Again, looking at this. This suggests that in this context, the shok denotes the part of the leg between the neck, the knee, and the ankle. And this means that a man may not gaze at the thigh of a married woman. Also, a man may not recite the Shema if he can see the exposed thigh of his wife. It is difficult to understand what Rav Chisda is teaching. After all, this is our scroll saying this. We have already learned that a man may not recite the Shema if he can see any exposed tefach of any part of the woman's body that is normally covered. Some rabbis answer that the part of the leg referred to by Rav Chisda is not always covered. So therefore one might have thought that its exposure does not prohibit the recital of Shema. Rav Huna's statement is consequently needed to correct this assumption that you shouldn't say Shema. Alternative, Rav Chisda's point is that the thigh is such a private area that even less than a tefach of it, if it's exposed, you shouldn't say the Shema. However, neither of these approaches suffices to explain Rav Chisda's statement according to Rashi, who maintains that Rav Chisda also refers to the prohibition of gazing. The Gemara has already taught that gazing even at a little finger is forbidden, although the little finger is always revealed and is shorter than a tefach. Two things against it. What then does Rav Chisda add by teaching that a man may not gaze at a woman's thigh? One solution is that gazing at a little finger is forbidden only if its intent is to derive pleasure from the experience. Rav Chisda's statement is consequently to teach that since the thigh is a very private area, one may not gaze at it even if he doesn't have such an intent. So now it doesn't matter my intent, it matters where I'm gazing. Guard your eyes. The Gemara, by the way, is not saying walk with blinders. Again, mistakel is not seeing. Like Anira Edza, I see this, no problem. I can see everything in front of me. Everything is fairable. But when I gaze at something, again, that is the major thing we're talking about. If I gaze and I put so much attention into it, even if I don't have intent to get derive benefit, I shouldn't be doing it.
What did you say before about between the knee and the ankle?
That's what they want to suggest. That's what they're talking about.
That's not the thigh.
Right?
That's this thigh here, yeah.
That could be a thigh, but they think
they're calling
that the thigh.
Really?
What would we call that?
The calf.
The calf. They're calling the calf the thigh.
Oh.
Yeah. So they're suggesting that. Some people say it's higher.
Okay.
For those who remember mini dresses, you could look at the calf. You could look at the thigh also. Okay. Whatever you want. Or, by the way, when somebody is fully dressed. Again, that's the point. Mistakel, they're going for the extreme case of I'm seeing the flesh. If I see a woman who is fully dressed and I'm mistakil at her, that's wrong. I'm never allowed to gaze, because gazing is going to, I'm doing it for a purpose. I'm doing it for the purpose of pleasure. I'm imagining, my fantasies are going crazy.
It's not just face-to-face conversation.
It's fine. You have no problem.
That's normal.
You're not gazing at her. You're looking. By the way, today, I want to know something. Today, if you don't look at a person directly when you're talking to them, and I know some people will look above me. They'll look up. They won't look into my eyes. They'll look above. I always have a problem with that. I personally have a problem with that, because look straight out, because then I can see if you're lying or not. I'm very much into. My father taught me, when you're fighting, whenever you want to fight with somebody, you have to look in their eyes, because the eyes will tell you where they're going to strike, or their feet, either one. And he always said, watch the eyes, because the eyes will always glance very quickly. So if you're not willing to look at me, and you're always trying to avert my gaze, as it were, where my eyes are, I don't know. I'm always taken aback by that thing. Why aren't you willing to look at me?
People, when they talk to the press and interviews, say, "Wow, dark glasses. They don't want you. They don't want."
That's something. That's some shagathim. That's some shagathim already. But the reason, but I want you to know the same reason. They don't want you to see what they're thinking. 100%. But what I'm saying is, you have. So if I'm looking, so some people, when they're looking at when they're talking to a woman, will look a little bit above. Now today, women see that, because women are very used to that, and they're also taken off by that. So you could be creating a profanation of God's name by doing that. Why don't you look at me? What, you can't see me? So again, I would say normal conversation, no problem. Look at the person, see them. But again, if I'm gazing into your eyes to notice that they're twinkling, that's wrong too. Okay, I have to know myself. What am I trying? What am I doing here? If I'm looking at you just to show you that I care about what you think, fine. So I look you in your eyes, and that's it. And we can judge. But if I'm looking at you, but then I'm thinking, oh, what dreamy eyes you have. It's not the time. That's already gazing. So I have to know myself. What am I doing? And if I'm going to keep gazing, or of course, depending on, we do this. We allow our eyes to go where we want them to go. And that's gazing. That's not good. Okay, that's what the Gemara is saying. Really, that's what it's saying. When I gaze, it's over. If I just look, no big deal, I can look. Okay? So, how do we know that the thigh is irva? Shanam, as it says, Gali shok ivri naharot, that expose the thigh and cross the rivers. That was from Isaiah. Okay, and it's also written, your nakedness will be exposed, and also your embarrassment will be seen. And this passage was talking about the thigh and irva together. So that was going on. Okay. Then the last part is Amar Shmuel. Shmuel said, Kol be'isha irva. The voice of a woman is considered nakedness. Shnamar, how do we know? Because this is from Shir Shirim, Song of Songs. Kikolech arev marich nava, for your voice is sweet and your countenance comely. Now again, here I'll run through it really quickly. It refers to a woman singing, not her normal voice. If a woman singing, that is what we're going to call it irva. That's why, because that's the abnormal. We listen to our wives speaking, we hear women speaking all the time, but we don't always hear them singing. And if you go to a concert, like Bill goes to the operas, or if I go to musicals or anything like that, the voice, that singing voice, can do a lot more than just a speaking voice. Okay, the woman, also the man, again for the women's side of that, it can really, a song can bring something across. That's why some people will not listen to women singing on the radio. Even though it's a radio, even though it's a recording, we have so many leniencies for these sort of things. But if it's going to bring up fantasies in your mind as to what she either looks like or what what you can do and all these other things, then again you have to know yourself. You cannot listen. If it's not going to affect you, or if you think it's not, that's always a question too. But if it's not going to do anything, so you can always you have plenty of leniencies. What I'm absolutely not allowed to do is to hear a woman, unlike not my wife, a woman sing if she's singing alone. What do you call it? A solo. A solo. I absolutely, if it's without, in other words, if I'm not watching on TV or something like that or radio, I absolutely am forbidden to hear that. There's no. I haven't really seen any strong leniencies about that. I know some people come up with these crazy leniencies, but I've yet to see something that's really good. If, on the other hand, women are singing with men, no problem, according to many opinions. Furthermore, if the woman is singing prayers, no problem, because the Yetzer Hara doesn't get, the evil inclination is not brought up with singing prayers. So if the women are singing Aleinu Shabbat Ladon HaKol, I don't have to worry. If they're singing Shema Yisrael, I don't have to worry. If they're singing Lullaby and Good Night, okay, it could be a problem. It could be a problem. It is a problem. That's when you're not allowed to listen. Okay? So it says, forbidden for a man to listen to the singing of any woman with whom he is forbidden to cohabit. This includes unmarried women, since they are presumably in the state of Nida, as well as non-Jewish women. Furthermore, a man may not recite the Shema while he can hear a woman singing, even if he is not deliberately listening to her, because again, that can bring up thoughts in his mind. The later prohibition applies even to one's wife. Some rabbis, though, maintain the Gemara statement was not made in reference to the Shema. In their view, the Gemara is teaching only that a man is forbidden to listen to the singing of a woman. However, a man who can merely hear a woman singing and is not deliberately listening is allowed to recite the Shema. Or, again, using New York as a standard bearer here, if you're walking through, you're in the subways, I don't know if they do it here because I don't take any subways, I don't take any trains or anything here. But in New York, I remember that you had, in the subways, they're all interconnected underground, and they would have people collecting, what do you call it, the people would sing and play their guitar. Yeah. Okay? And they were...
Buskers.
What is it called?
Buskers.
Buskers? Thank you. Okay, so, and you're supposed to throw money in, so I asked one of the rebbeim at the yeshiva, I said, look, I have to go from this train to that train, and there's always
it's Chicago.
Somebody singing, and sometimes the woman, what am I supposed to do? Do I have to go through like this? He said, walk through normally. I said, but it's called Visha Erga. The woman's voice is Erga, it's nakedness. He said, are you listening to her? Are you listening intently to her? Or are you going from train to train? If you're listening intently, you're going to sit down and tell you it's forbidden. If you're going from one train to another, you're not listening, you hear it, good, okay, fine. That's not your intent. Since it's not your intent, you can walk through. So again, that's what we're looking at. What is my intent? Am I listening to her? Am I really thinking? Am I getting involved in that? That's forbidden. That's outright forbidden.
Or you're standing there waiting for
the train. If I'm standing and she happens to be singing, leave me alone. I don't have to cover my ears, I don't do anything. That's it. Okay, and if I happen to enjoy it, it's call it rabbis. Can't do much about it. Okay, and then again, Amar Sheshet, Seya Be'isha Irva, that the hair of a woman is Irva, nakedness, as why? Because Shneimar Sarech Ke'eder Izim, that your hair is like a flock of goats. Wonderful compliment. Okay, so here again, that's from a Song of Songs, saying your hair is like a flock of goats streaming down from Mount Gilead. Apparently a very beautiful sight. Here too, the Gemara is twofold. One, a man may not gaze at the hair of a woman with whom he is forbidden to cohabit. Also, a man may not recite the Shema while he can see the hair of any woman, including his wife, even if he is not gazing at it. Rav Yehuda Chassid maintains that this statement as well does not apply to recital of the Shema. Fine. Prohibition of reciting the Shema while in view of a woman's hair exposed here applies only in the case of a married woman who usually cover their hair. A man, however, is allowed to recite the Shema in presence of unmarried women who leave their hair uncovered. Why? Because it's normal. It's normal to do it. So now it's a matter of who am I looking at? Am I looking at a married woman, unmarried woman? Do I know? Today, we don't really get involved in this because who knows who's married, who knows who's not married. It's best not to look at people. It's best to, by the way, the way to avoid this totally is instead of saying Shema and looking around the room of the world, look in your Siddur, you'll skip everything, you wouldn't get into any of these problems, and don't sing where the radio's, and don't say daven where the radio's going, don't daven where your wife is singing, or anybody's singing. You're not going to have concentration anyway. So it's best to go into the shul to daven, and then look in the siddur so you don't talk to all your friends, and that's the best thing to do. You'll avoid all of these headaches. But really, that's the sources for where we have to cover our head. The source comes from Really Sota, but it's how it's defined as irva and how it carries into a halacha and to our daily life. It's an interesting Gemara. And we'll have to stop there.
I can remember you telling the story of when you're traveling on by plane, you ask if there's an empty room somewhere where you...
Right. Because that way you daven there and you avoid all the headaches.
No distraction. This just makes sense.
Right. And that's, again, I'm following not only am I not worrying about irva, but I'm also not worrying about somebody bothering me or asking me questions. Can you tell me what the plane is? Because I have tried when I've davened, when I couldn't find a place, I just found a corner. Some hojo came to me and said, do you know when the plane's taken? And I couldn't answer the guy. I'm right in the middle of prayer.
Your attention is...
And I was like...
This was Mincha, I take it.
Yeah, Mincha. I had no choice. And so, for Marva, I always can find a place. But yeah, it was... but the guys come over and you can't concentrate. So you really want to be able to concentrate. That's why I always try to find a place where nobody's going to bother me.